The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 11-teen, Radiator Springs. As I approached the town of Radiator Springs, the mists first became a layer of noxious exhaust, then faded away to reveal what seemed, at first, to be a normal town. The Cozy Cone Inn appeared to be a welcoming oasis in the surrounding harshness of the desert, and it looked like Sarge's surplus hut would give me the chance to resupply for my journey. I saw what seemed from a distance to be odd metal carriages moving from one location to another, but thought little of it. To my horror, as I drew closer, I saw the true nature of these metal carriages. They were some nightmarish construct with staring glass eyes, babbling iron mouths, and acrid-smelling black wheels in place of limbs. I soon learned, however, that while the appearance of Radiator Springs' denizens was terrifying, my most dreadful discovery was yet to come.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft domains of dread because we've already got all the cars from Cars to use as cars in Cars.
Along the way, we'll look at the Darklord, the domain itself, and some plot hooks and adaptation ideas to integrate the setting into your own campaign.
Today's episode, Cars.
So with this one, we have a son who went through a big Cars phase. Well, we have a son who went through a big Cars the movie phase, and a son who went through a big Cars the abstract
vehicle,
concept
yeah.
of the vehicle phase. And so when we were thinking about this podcast, like, we instantly knew, like, this is one of those classic gothic horror settings. Like, we thought of Lion King,
right.
Peter Pan, Princess and the Frog, and Cars. And it's not just that it's that classic gothic horror movie, it also has that fantastic Byronic Ravenloft villain, Tow Mater.
Really one of the iconic villains. I mean, like, Disney's built an entire merchandising empire. He's on the cover of Disney Villainous: Mater expansion. So this was tricky. We knew we wanted to do this, but this was really tricky because they're Cars. And so we got a couple of options here. We've got, do you do the sort of Kingdom Hearts that the PCs find themselves transformed into metal vehicles when they arrive in Radiator Springs?
Some real potential for body horror.
Yeah,
there,
really. We toyed that around for a long time. And we decided it would be better to have it be that the PCs don't have any kind of transformation. Also, we've never done that before. It isn't really a thing we ever see in any Ravenloft domain. That would be a real big shift for the PCs. So we actually realized that what we thought of as a problem, as a challenge, was actually a huge benefit. Because, little spoiler for the genres of horror here, that really allows immediate reality horror. That they come out of the mist, and they come into this place where biological organisms don't exist. Even the insects are these automatons, like going to Mechanus, which we'll mention that again, put a pin in that. And the people are these just wheeled machines with big faces who've never seen a person before. So this is immediate experience of being plunged into this bizarre nightmare world.
I mean, the horror design on the Cars is just fantastic. Didn't they get H.R. Geiger?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, then you have this bucktooth hayseed who meets you and declares you his best friend and won't leave you alone. So we've got this really strong immediate hook. Put the PCs in the position of Lightning McQueen, only everything's a living nightmare. So there's a lot to dig into here. And we want to start with a real deep dive into, as you said, one of the iconic Disney villains of the 2000s, Ask Any Parent, and the most horrific nightmare of this world of mechanical automaton parodies of life that the PCs will come into, Tow Mater.
A section we call The Lord. The Lord. Radiator Springs does not seem to have any sort of formal government, just a sheriff, a few local celebrities, and a motley collection of business owners. One would expect the sheriff, whom I do not believe to be a hag, to be in charge. However, after only a few short hours in Radiator Springs, it was impossible not to notice how everyone bowed and scraped to the local rustic, Tow Mater, whom I do not believe to be a hag. Despite Mater's abrasive personality and irritating mannerisms, the citizens fawn over him, accepting his most boorish behaviors with indulgent chuckles. At first I thought this was some quirk of constructs. Who knows what they might find endearing? However, after a few moments of speaking to Mater's best friend, Lightning McQueen, whom I do not believe to be a hag, I realized how wrong I was. Behind McQueen's jovial manner and warm laughter, I sensed a lurking terror. When Mater described adventures that the two of them had enjoyed together, and McQueen dared to contradict him, Mater was able to rewrite his memories with a word, suggesting that a terrible spell forces the constructs to accept and believe his tall tales.
So you know who Mater is because that's inescapable in this world we live in, especially if you're a parent. But let's make sure you understand what a Dark Lord is. So, Rachel, what is a Dark Lord?
A Dark Lord is an evil being that the Dark Powers look at and say, well, hello, new friend, and they put them into a domain that is a special hell tailor-made just for them.
Just like what happened to Lightning McQueen, it's so perfect!
Oh my, you're right. Like, because we were thinking Mater is the Dark Lord so much, I didn't even think about how Lightning McQueen is basically plunged into the
right,
mist.
Yeah.
But there's so many levels
Heather,
here.
Sorry.
Right.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
But, so there are some amazing Dark Lords, there are some not so amazing Dark Lords. We have 4 qualities for what make a great Dark Lord. And we're going to be looking at them as they apply to that most iconic of Dark Lords, Ulrich von Karkov, because we're going to show how these 4 traits apply to him, and if they apply to him and also apply to Mater, then we know we've got ourselves a good Dark Lord.
Right.
So Ulrich von Karkov, as we all know, is the Dark Lord of Valachan before Chikuna. We're mostly going to be looking at him as he was in 2nd and 3rd edition and the classic adventure Curse of Ulrich. So, first for our great Dark Lords, we have their act of ultimate darkness, the horrible evil thing that they did to get the Dark Power's attention that got them made a Dark Lord in the first place. In Ulrich von Karkov's case, he was in the Kargat.
Right.
And presumably did some really bad things in the Kargat.
Which are like sort of the secret police of Darkon.
Yeah, the secret police of Darkon. He presumably did some bad things there.
I mean, you usually would.
I mean, and I guess they were worse than anything that other Kargat agents did because none of them were Dark Lords.
We can conclude that from the data.
And also, there was an evil wizard who completely made his life a living nightmare, and he thought about getting revenge on that wizard. So that's unforgivable right there. The second element is that they have the torment, or since this is a Disney podcast, they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. In Ulrich von Karkov's case, he was a panther who got turned into a human by this evil wizard because the evil wizard had been, a woman had turned him down. And so the evil wizard said, well, if I sent her this wonderful boyfriend and she and her wonderful boyfriend get amorous and then he turns back into a panther and rips her to shreds, then that'll show her by
That'll show her.
And then he turned the panther back into a person, and then said person decided to go get revenge on the evil wizard by becoming a vampire and joining the Kargat, and never did get revenge on the wizard, and then became a Dark Lord. And he got what he wanted, which was to be like this powerful vampire, but lost what he had, which was actually getting revenge on the wizard or doing anything to establish agency in his own storyline.
That old gothic chestnut.
Yes. And then the element of tragedy and relatability. Who among us has not turned into a panther on our wedding night and torn our beloved limb from limb?
Metaphorically speaking.
Speak for yourself. You don't remember that?
I do.
And then finally, our last element of a good Dark Lord is that the domain reflects the Dark Lord and their curse. Panthers live in the jungle.
They do.
And Valachan is a jungle.
It is.
So, really, I mean, what more could you ask for?
Is there a better reflection of the Dark Lord in the domain?
I doubt it.
No.
So that's how our most classic Dark Lord meets
the
these four.
template, the mold that the others are all poured from.
So, Tom, why don't you tell us about how Mater meets these qualities?
Right. Mater is basically a were-panther, but he has wheels and a hook and is not a panther. Otherwise, exactly the same. So first we have our Act of Ultimate Darkness, and this is where we're kind of also getting our AU. So we have Cars, it's happening, we have Cars 1, and then we have Cars 2, the true horror classic of the Pixar canon. The living nightmare that they have bestowed upon the parents of the world.
Which is playing off their series of classic horror shorts, Mater's Tall Tales.
Right, yes. That's really the evolutionary link to get from Cars to Cars 2. I know a lot of fans who just do the main movies may have ignored that. I really recommend looking at those if you want to see how we got from there to there.
We're going to be kind of annoying with our citations of Mater's Tall Tales here. It's like with, the Book of Peter Pan
exactly.
or Visman's Guide to Dragons. It cannot understand the Cars franchise or indeed Pixar in general without really getting into Mater's Tall Tales.
Yeah. So sorry about that. We don't like to give you homework. We try not to, but it really is essential for doing justice to this text. So the Act of Ultimate Darkness, we have Lightning McQueen comes back. He spends the whole day with Mater, and they do fun shenanigans. And then he says, Mater, I just want to have a date with my wife, my girlfriend.
Whatever she is at this point.
Yeah, whatever she is at this point. And Mater says, okay, but then Mater pretends to be the waiter and ruins his date and his summer and indeed his whole life. And the narcissistic annoyance of pretending to be a waiter and ruining Lightning's date, that is when the mist comes around Radiator Springs, bringing them into then the rest of Cars 2. Because it is this perfect horror classic. We're just putting a little bit of Ravenloft metaphysics.
Yeah, because the thing with Cars 2, it's so smart. And I get they didn't fully market it as a reality horror.
Right,
That's probably where some of the dissonance came in. But you see that Mater wants to be the center of the universe.
Right.
And then through his act of will, he sort of shapes the universe around him so that it happens. I mean, honestly, this is a Ravenloft podcast. I kind of wish it were a Mage the Ascension podcast because Mater is a marauder. That is what's happening here.
We're all familiar with the fan theory that Mater is so psychologically shattered that Lightning wants one night alone without him. That the rest of the movie is just his psychotic episode, where, as Rachel said, he becomes the most important thing in the universe. He becomes the center of the universe, and everyone talks about how important he is, and everyone talks about how great he is, and he never does anything like meaningful or good, or he has any personal growth, but everyone just congratulates him, and Lightning's so sorry for me, and really... Right, we all know the theory.
No matter how much he deserves getting kicked off Lightning's picture, Lightning is so weepingly apologetic. Because this is all happening in his mind.
So what we're just doing is taking that pretty well-known fan theory and literalizing it. And just having it be like, yes, it is kind of his psychotic episode dream world versus center of the universe, but in the literal way, in that he is a Dark Lord in a Ravenloft domain of living cars. Mater's Tall Tales is that transitional thing because it is pre-Cars 2, but it gives us that sense of this intense reality-bending narcissism.
Oh my gosh! I just realized. Yeah. So he's got this reality-bending. Like, he's forcing Lightning McQueen to go through.
Yes, to pulled into his insanity.
But he's a machine. The reason that they're cars, the reason they're machines, is this is actually a film adaptation of I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it is. That's really interesting. I need to Google that later, see if that was a deliberate reference.
He's forcing McQueen to be worshiping him. He's making himself this god in the Cars universe. And it's... I really hope Harlan Ellison saw some of the money from this.
Yeah. So then we get the torment. And they got what we call it, as Rachel said, they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. And of course he gets what he wants. As we said, literally the entire universe is centered around him. Everyone pays attention to him all the time. He's the most important car in the world, and he solves all the problems, and he fixes everything, and everyone that was hurt his feelings, apologizes weepingly, and that's what he wants. But it's in this world of delusion. On some level, I think, he knows he is still just the worst, and everyone hates him. And so everyone's sort of being forced to like him and pretend that he's not just the worst thing in the world.
It's just, you can see them, like, he looks at them and he can see the loathing just behind their eyes. And the desperation to escape, that feeling that every parent watching these movies has, reflected in the eyes of the cars around him.
Right, really, it's such immersive storytelling. And then the element of tragedy and relatability. And I think it's what makes Mater such a beloved villain. It's why they've sold so much Mater merchandise. That we've all wanted to be the center of attention. We've all had times in our life when we have inserted ourselves in our wacky shenanigans in the social situations, when we've demanded everyone spend time with us and pay attention to us and not allowed anything else and just ruined any other time to do anything else. We've all been needy toddlers. And so we can all feel that resonance of this just needy toddler of a main character who we are watching a movie about.
Yeah, it's so smart of them because every one of their viewers who's able to comprehend what's going on in the movie has been 3 years old.
Yes.
Just, it's genius. And one of the things that I did not pick up on this until we were watching the movies for this podcast, but it was so smart of them, and they never draw attention to it, that Lightning McQueen is a race car, and he is literally driving away and leaving Mater behind. That Mater literally cannot keep up with him.
Yeah.
And is just constantly feeling as though he's just staying behind him and being left behind as Lightning McQueen speeds off to try and have any kind of life outside of Mater.
To just have dinner with his girlfriend.
But they never draw attention to what genius metaphor this race car thing is.
It's probably why they made them cars.
That makes sense.
And then finally, the main reflection of the personality of the curse. This is one of the things pretty obvious. Mm-hmm. They're cars. Everyone in this universe is a car, like Mater. So obviously it is this sort of living manifestation of his being. And beyond that, we get the other deeper reflection, which is this sort of reality-shaping bubble that we have in the Mater Tall Tales in these little micro bursts, like we have in Cars 2, that the whole world is centered around his bizarre and nonsensical fantasies. And just, he comes up with the Mater Tall Tales, I'm sorry, we keep coming back to these, but they're such a good illustration. He comes up with some fantastical story about being a rock star or a wrestler or meeting a UFO. And he's telling the story, and the story Lightning McQueen's in it, and Lightning McQueen says, I wasn't in it. I don't remember that at all. And Mater says, you were there. That he's in the story. He's reacting in the memory with surprise.
He's being forced to participate. You could really run this as being a lot like Sienna. Just having him be the mad playwright who's forcing everyone to go through all of his shenanigans. I mentioned I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, but it also reminds me a lot of Into the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, obviously. And that no one exists except as these characters in his story, and they only exist to facilitate the story and spread the madness of the story to all the people watching it. So that is obviously our 4 qualities. I think we've established pretty clearly. Mater deserves to be up there with the iconic Dark Lords. So let's talk about being a Dark Lord, those special powers and dominions he has, his special abilities as a Dark Lord. So this was tricky to find a stat block to base him on, because he's a car, and there aren't a lot of those in the Monster Manual. And what we ended up going with was he has stats similar to a Marrow. And the reason we picked Marrow is because they have a harpoon attack. So that gives you this sort of tow truck. It's the closest thing there's to a tow truck in the Monster Manual. And obviously, we do have to cut the amphibious, the swim speed, and the ability to breathe underwater. I tried very hard. I did a lot of Googling. I could not get definitive answers on can Mater swim. I assume there might have been some ancillary material. There's not Mater, underwater Mater, or Mater in the Navy or anything like that in any of the Mater Tall Tales.
And there was that new Cars show that just came out. And we're on a pretty tight schedule, so we didn't have time to watch through that.
I did a little, Googling the episode summaries, and none of them mention swimming or water. Like, Finn McMissile can swim in Cars 2. We never see Mater, but that's the big underwater set piece. They don't do another one of those, so that has to remain. If it turns out in the Disney Adventures comics they had a story where Mater can swim, just use the Marrow as is.
Yeah, because the Marrow is basically a tow truck with fins.
Right, yeah. So. And please let us know, please comment, email if you are aware, if it's in canon, even secondary canon, that Mater can swim.
Another thing that we do with him, it's our go-to for Dark Lords like Mater. That force everyone to like them no matter how horrible they are. That he has charisma powers. He has charm. People put up with his wacky shenanigans even when by all rights they shouldn't anymore. So as long as you are in Radiator Springs, you are permanently under the friendship spell.
Right, yeah.
And it's just the horror of being forced to think that this obnoxious Larry the Cable Guy character is your best friend in the center of your universe. This power is really the core of the horror of this.
I know we're tipping our hand for the genres of horror a lot, but it's hard not to talk about the living nightmare that is Tow Mater without talking about the sort of elements of horror, and it's hard to do that without strongly hinting what we're going for the genres of horror. So
there's so many of them. I mean, there's the cosmic, there's the psychological. We did stay away from body horror, slasher, because he
won't leave you alone. Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what's going on with Lightning McQueen in a lot of Cars and Cars 2. Also, we want to give he has the lucky feat because, Mater does have good luck. He doesn't have to turn up things. This is sort of a very simple, mechanical way of manifesting some of that center of the universe-ness. And obviously, you're the GM. He doesn't have to strictly follow the rules of the lucky feat. That can just be sort of the mechanical hand wave for why he is this kind of center of the universe and everything always works out for him.
And then the last power that Mater has is the power that every Dark Lord has, which is the power to close the borders. And in Mater's case, that power manifests as huge piles of scrap that you have to navigate through. The borders become just this junkyard.
Right, really like evocative horror setting.
Yeah, you're wandering through them, and if you're very lucky, then when you go through these piles of junk, you just kind of find yourself back in the domain. If you're not lucky, you hear the faint roar in the distance, and Frank the Combine Harvester is chasing you through the junkyard.
Right.
Because Frank is just a fantastic monster.
Right, yeah. He's one of the iconic Cars monsters, and you want to incorporate that.
Yeah. And since he does have that link with Mater, we figure that he's kind of been bound in servitude at the borders, kind of acting as his border guardian.
We're going off text a little bit, but we really wanted to have that Frank encounter.
Yeah.
So then we get to our final Darklord section, which is the trait, ideal, bond, and flaw. Now, in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, they give those, and they give them as quotes. And, of course, we want to do it as quotes as well. And we can't, unlike WotC writers, we can't just make up our own quotes that fit. We have to come up with quotes from the text, because we're dedicated to our art and our craft. And this was a tricky one. Like Maleficent, Mater is not a very internally expressive character. Like, you have to really see a lot going on beyond the eyes. A lot of his character stuff is presented much more in his actions and his role in the story than in, like, direct talking about who he is or his goals. So this was tricky.
It was.
We did our best. So we'll start with the role-playing trait.
And this is one, we ended up having to present these as a fait accompli because it was so tricky that actually we couldn't really come up with a whole lot beyond these. So the role-playing trait we came up with for Mater was dadgum.
I mean, if you, like, you're the GM, you're sitting, you have your screen, you have your players, they're in a nightmare world of living cars, and there's this guy, and he's this living car with a tow truck, and he's saying he's their best friend, and you want to role play that character, dadgum.
That's everything you need right there.
Now, the ideal is the one that was easiest, right?
We came up with this one right away. Yeah, this, once again, I'm sorry we keep saying Mater's Tall Tales, but this is kind of the catchphrase for Mater's Tall Tales, and it's... on the surface it's so simple, but it's so tragic because it's, if I'm lying, I'm crying.
Yeah, that's so good.
It's so good. Because it seems, it works so well as an ideal because it seems on the surface like this profession of honesty.
Right.
But then you look at the fact that it's conditional. That it's not saying he's not lying. It's saying that if he's lying, he's crying. Which he's doing because he knows on the inside that his entire life is a lie.
And his entire life is a horrific nightmare, and everyone hates him, and he's the worst. But look, we gotta cut this short. This is going to run long. There's so much to talk about here. We're already running long on this Darklord section. But just if you think about it, if you contemplate it as role playing this NPC, there's so much there.
If I'm lying, I'm crying.
Okay, so we gotta kind of hurry through the next.
Yes.
So the bond. This is from Cars 2. I sure wish you'd hurry up and get back because we got a whole summer worth of best friend fun to make up for. Once again, there's layers. There's so many layers. There is the, obviously on the surface, it's this statement of his best friend is lightning. He wants to spend time with lightning, wants to play with lightning. On the deeper level, however, it shows you just the toxicity and the possessiveness and the horror of this relationship. That he says, lightning's been working, right? Like lightning wasn't on vacation. Lightning was basically doing his job. And now he's coming on vacation, but Mater's saying, like, no, I'm owed that time. That time, that's a debt you owe to me, is that time you were away at work doing your job. But you have to make up for that. And this assumption that Lightning's main priority, the main thing he's going to be doing almost as another job, is going to be paying that debt of attention and time and energy to Mater. There's so much there.
There's so much there, yeah. And then our last quality is our flaw, which is, ain't no need to watch where I'm going, just need to know where I've been. And it's just that short-sightedness on Mater, you know? And again, the driving backwards is it's such a smart metaphor.
It's all right there.
Because he can't see what's right in front of him. He can't look ahead. He's so living in the moment that he doesn't have the foresight to see that by having this possessive relationship with Lightning McQueen, he's actually strangling the relationship and driving him away.
That everyone hates him and he's the worst. So, let us... We have so much to talk about with Radiator Springs as a setting, but we have attempted to do justice to this iconic Disney villain, to this iconic gothic character of the sort of Disney Pixar 2000s canon, and we will now move on and talk about the nightmare world that he has created around his own ego in our section about Radiator Springs, we like to call
The Land.
Okay, that's enough. Unlike Pixar, we know when enough Mater is enough. And we know when... That's enough of that. And we know
when he stops being funny.
Yeah, we know when to end a bit. So, happy April Fool's Day. We hope you enjoyed this extremely silly, very difficult to get through deadpan.
Yeah, if you notice that Tom was talking a lot more than me in this episode, it's because you've also probably noticed from previous episodes that Tom is a lot better at keeping a straight face than I am. It wasn't that he was talking over me, it was that I kept corpsing.
And if the edit is weird, it's because we had a lot of weird audio. We had to keep cutting our laughter.
Oh, and legitimately, we have had multiple people say, how are you going to do Radiator Springs?
There you go, that's how.
We had a couple things we were thinking about doing for this episode, but we're like, they were joking, but we technically have had requests for Radiator Springs. So here you go, everybody.
Our real episode is going to come out on the 13th, like always, and it is going to be the opposite of ours. And blah, 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 social stuff. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, email us, all that good stuff. Wonder Darklords, you know the drill. If you're listening to our April Fool's Day episode, you know the drill. If not, listen to a real episode. Listen to the ending. Give us money, buy our stuff.
Etc., etc., etc.
That's the series, but not a joke.
Tom is multiple characters from Raya and the Last Dragon. Chief among them, Boom and Con Baby.
Thank you for listening. Happy gaming, happy April Fool's Day, and Mater is the worst.
Parting thoughts. I cannot overstate the horror I felt during my stay at Radiator Springs, nor my relief at leaving it behind. The prospect of dancing attendance on Toe Mater for the rest of one's life should give pause to even the bravest heart, and it is impossible to imagine the strain of pretending to find his antics amusing. As I held my balloon mist talisman in my hand, I felt the wind trying to whip it away. It seems that it may turn out to be, feels that it will undoubtedly, looks like a rather blustery day today. Regards, D.
What is this nonsense? Was my servant abducted by a hag who gave her nightmares of monstrous constructs with mind-altering capabilities? Or have you been at the Somnos wine when I clearly instructed you not to partake in such debauchery? Whatever it is, this is certainly not something I asked for, nor wanted. You and me both, buddy.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening. So Uruk von Karkov, as everyone knows, right, was the original Darkon of Valachan before Chikuna. And...
You said the original Darkon of Valachan.
Okay. So
honey, we're trying to do a podcast here. Get it together.
This is serious business.